Today we will study Levy's chess book, How to Win at Chess. And this is the part 2. Part 2, who are 800 to 1200 elo can read with me. In the chapter 2, the topics are choose the best opening for white and black in order to win more games. To play in games the hardest phase of the chess game like a champion, spot the most common patterns to land spectacular multi-move combinations, evaluate any chess positions correctly, create your own middle game plans, and neutralize your opponents. Okay, roughly speaking, the reader who will benefit the most from this section between 800 to 1200. If you are lower rating, challenging, but still may be interesting for exciting you to review. If you are above maximum, especially if you elo is 1600 to 1700, I still think you can learn a good amount. Certainly can farm up your skills. Okay. Chapter 9, Part 2, Chapter 9, Intermediate Opening. In the first chapter, I'm going to give you some into my approach. One. Okay, in this chapter, Levy will teach us the more advanced level opening for white and black, and a lot of factors go into choosing and opening your personality, your memory, how lazy you are, how much time. Based on all these factors, you can choose the opening that suit you best. Okay, learning openings with white. we touch this chapter 2 part without repeating here. Mm-hmm. Playing the same opening and building your experience within it will deepen your understanding, giving your game's familiarity and helping you appreciate the tricks that to learn opening with white. Pick all the fast move and stick to the fast move. Pick a fast move and stick to that fast move. Okay, learn openings with white. Pick a fast move and stick to that fast move. Remember what we covered in the chapter 2 through pick a fast move that makes sense and leads to actual studied openings like a flank pawn. Forward to square every games would be consistent but also terrible. Instead, let's look d4. Okay, d4 is the queen's pawn. The queen's pawn opening can lead to the London system. Okay, London system, the queen's gambit, the Tomfosky attack, and many other openings. Okay, like when we play d4, we can make it like London system, the queen's gambit, or the Tomfosky attack, and many others opening. And if you want to play this, you have to open with queen's pawn. The point is that if you are going to play d4, play d4 all the time. Yeah, many GM also suggested that if you want to reach a level, then stick to one opening. When you get experienced, then try others. The point is that if you are going to play d4, play d4 all the time. Playing different fast move every game just mean you never learn any of them in real depth. Yeah, that's true. I'm highlighting this. Recently I started learning to box and I fight orthodox, which mean I fight with my left hand forward and my right hand back. Okay, that's avoidable. I think mm, all the work I have put in would go out the window. It's similar in chess. Give yourself something consistent build upon. That doesn't have to be d4. It could be e4, the most common fast move in the chess, which leads to many most popular openings. It could be c4, the English, which is little rarer and trickier to master. Let's use d4. Okay, d4 to continue our lesson on how to learn any openings. The laziest, which doesn't mean there are anything wrong with it. Continuation of d4 is to play the London system. Okay, London system is a lazy system, which is bringing out our dark square bishop to f4. Yeah, d4, bishop f4. then you can play the knight on f3. If you play the e7 pawn, if you play the e7 pawn, then we have to play the knight to attack the pawn. And this is the most difficult position after 2 moves in London. Respond to d5. This is the most difficult position after 2 moves in the London. White begins with the queen's pawn d4. Black respond to d5. Okay, if he d5. Okay, and white moves their bishop to f4. Yeah, white moves their bishop to f4. Bear in mind that black might not even play d5. Black might not even play d5, but unless black play e5. Okay, in which case you have to able to capture it for free with your d4 pawn or g5, in which case just capture the pawn on g5 with your bishop. You can play bishop to f4 on your second move. Okay, if he played d5, then it's okay. If he played e5, then we have to capture it because it's make threats. I think it is a counter of London. Okay, I have to highlight, bear in mind that black might not even play d5, but unless black play e5, in which case you had be able to capture it for free with your d4 pawn or g5, in which case just capture the pawn on g5 with your bishop. You can play bishop to f4 on your second move, whatever black does. And one thing we have to remember, if we play e5, then we have to capture it. Well, let's look at the board and try to imagine. If he play e5, we have to capture, and then he said capture it free with your d4 pawn or g5, or if he played Okay, if he played e4, e5, then capture it using d4, d4 pawn. If he played e5, yeah, g5, then capture it using bishop and play in the second move bishop f4. You can play bishop to f4 on your second move, what black does. Okay, from the first position, from this first position you can end up in a position or at least a very similar one quite often. From this first position you can end up in a position or at least very similar one quite often. This means that if you start with the London system you will end up in this kind of position in most of the games you play with white. Okay, how he played d5, d5, then bishop to f4, black played e6, then knight f3, he played knight f6, okay, I played e3, he played c5, I play bishop d3. Okay, this is the basic setup of London system. Mm, of course it depends on little bit how black plays, but in terms of your six sort of position will become very familiar to you. This means that you should be much better prepared in this position than your opponent, who is less likely to know everything about the London system from black's perspective, because playing with black means facing the whole range of different whites opening. You do not have to choose the London after d4 of you don't have to choose the London after d4. Of course, we looked briefly in the Queen's Gambit earlier in this book. If you want to play the Queen's Gambit, then you need to study the best move against various black's responses. Okay. This is the Queen's Gambit. d4 e4, that if he first played d4, then he captured, he played d5, we play c4, then he captured, we play e4. to get the more middle. If you want to play Queen's Gambit, then you need to choose. Then you need to study the best moves and various black responses. A lot of your moves will be similar, and again, a lot of your position you find yourself in after 6 or 7 moves will be familiar. That doesn't say you can play some few moves in any scenario. Clearly, if black should capture one of your piece on the square you had ordinarily moved to, you need to adapt. The ability to adapt comes from starting the best moves to play based on different moves from black. Yeah, he means to say that if you play the London system all the time, then you will get response from the black side, and you will be adapt you can adapt how your opponent can play. From if you think from the black's perspective, you can relate others games, and you can move based on those scenario. The ability to adapt comes from starting the best moves to play based on different moves from black. This is the main line. He said in this line that you have to start in one opening. You have to choose one opening and play all the time. Then you can find the gap where you are losing the game. Which move should be bad for you? Playing e4 the king's pawn fast. Playing e4 the king's pawn fast is slightly different in that there is no one size fits all opening with e4, as the London would be for d4, where d4 London system can be played against most of the black does. If you want to play e4, then you need more options in your opening repertoire. In particular, you need to have a play against black's two moves. Most common response to e4. First, the symmetrical response. Symmetrical response means if he played d4, if you played d4, he played d5, or if you play e4, he played e5. Here black played e5, and you need to plan to continue from whether the Scotch, the Italian, or the Spanish opening. He talked about the previous chapter. You have to study that. It is the chapter 9 for 800 to 1200 elo. Likewise, you need a completely different opening plan against Sicilian defense. None of the openings above, like the Scotch or the Rui Lopez, work against the Sicilian. None of the openings above, like Scotch or the Rui Lopez, work against the Sicilian. The same goes for all the others. Black responses to e4. That means you need two different ways to play: the Caro-Kann, the French, and the modern, the Greek, the Scandinavian, and so on. You can see how chess can become a little bit overwhelming. You can probably also see why I tend to recommend d4 openings for beginners and intermediate players over e4. It might make you wonder why anybody choose to play openings that elicit such a variety of responses when the simpler approach might be playing something like London system, which you can play almost regardless of black's response. Well, when playing e4, the learning curve might be more intimidating, but you might get a greater variety of position, which might be more enjoyable for you, as well as deepening your all around understanding of the game. It's also worth mentioning that certain e4 open score very highly in terms of win percentage at the beginner and intermediate levels, but they need to be learned carefully. Alongside other e4's opening, you when the opponent doesn't play how you want them to play. Uh, it is all. It is also worth mentioning that certain e4 openings score very highly in terms of winning percentage at beginner and intermediate levels, but they need to be learned carefully. Alongside other e4's opening, you need when the opponent doesn't play how you want them to play. Okay, for the d4 opening, you can play London. Then others would move. I forgot. Sorry, d4 opening you can play London, Queen Gambit, Thomfoski. But e4 opens a variety of openings that is more interesting, and if you want to play e4, then you have to learn it carefully, all the what you play and what you want them to play. In this section he try to mention this learning openings with black. When playing with black, you must prepare for all the white's possible fast move. That might sound scary, but remember that 99% of the chess game probably start with a small handful of different moves. If white plays trash move in the opening, a refer back of the golden moves. Take control of the game. The most common white's opening is e4. Okay, golden moves. This is the golden moves. You capture the better center here. Wait a minute, I am working on something. I'm fixing something. Okay. So the first black opening you need to prepare will be a response to the king's pawn. There are a lot of choice here, including the Sicilian defense, the Scandinavian, and the Caro-Kann, on which I play and which we are going to look at more closely later on. The challenge when learning black's opening is that you cannot play your e4 response against different fast moves for white. For example, if white plays d4 on the fast move, you can no longer play Sicilian or Caro-Kann because queen's pawn opening leads to entirely different positions and consideration. Okay, and that is before we consider the reti, which is the white's knight to f3. Okay, if white plays f3 fast move as knight f3, then it is called reti opening, or the English white's pawn to c4. If white plays c4 pawn, then it is called English. Some people study specific opening response for each of white's most common opening. Other people do not have the time or the interest in doing that, which is completely understandable. There is a black's opening we looked at earlier, the King's Indian or brick setup, which can be played pretty much all the time. Okay, what is said? Blacks put the pawn. Black puts a pawn on d6, develop the knight on d6, develop the knight on f6, develop the knight on f6. Okay. Pushes their g pawn one square there to allow the bishop to sit on g7. Okay, g6 pawn, put the pawn to g6, then to allow the bishop, then bishop to g7, castle. Okay, theoretically this can be played against almost anything white does. In that sense, it's useful for beginners and is a bit like the London system in beginning. One size fits all. Many of the positions you will find yourself in here with black will look similar. This is he's tried to saying that this setup for black is uh, is a setup that you can play any setup for white. So choosing this setup black will save you study time because you can play it against almost things are the part of why it is harder to play chess with black than it is with white. You can learn one or two openings and play them in every game. With black there are so many different setups you can play, and very often you can find yourself in a position where your opponent is so much better prepared because they have played their openings 1,000 times. Okay, clearly you need to learn openings with both black and white because you have to play both colors either over the board or online. You won't get to choose. You need to look careful at black's opening against white's most common responses and choose to study the black's opening that you think suit your play and will be most challenging for white to deal with. Chess engine databases and statistics. In the next episode, we are going to take a deeper dive into a opening for white and an opening for black that will give you a blueprint for how to practically learn openings. It is worth investigating which openings works at different skill levels too. No matter your own skill level, it cannot be educational to study what's common at the level above your own. At the highest level of play, there are white and blacks opening that are used much more often than others. We call the most common way these games progress mainline and many line openings at the top level can mean both players knowing the first 30 moves each without even thinking. Sorry. At the highest level of the play, there are white and blacks opening that are used much more often than others. We call the most common way these games progress mainline, and the mainline opening at the top level can mean both players knowing the first 30 moves each without even thinking. At the top level can mean both players knowing the first 30 moves each without even thinking. there is a position in the Nasdaq Sicilian, for example, which is 41 moves deep and has appeared hundreds of times at master level chess, given you very unlikely to be able to play the main lines yet. Remember that what works best for grandmaster often isn't what was best for beginner and intermediate players. In the opening, we'll look at the next chapter. My recommendation may not be mainline or most popular openings at the top level of chess, and that because different things makes the most sense at the lower level of chess. Plus, if we make less common moves in our opening, then even if we are facing an opponent who had started hard, we may take them into a less known territory and catch them out. Okay. At an average rating of 1600, this position has been reached. What is happening? At an average rating of 1600, this position has been reached 56 million times according to the online database. If you make another move, e4, e5, knight f3, we move our we are now down to 35 of the original 56 million. However, if we play a different moves that taps into my approach by playing knight c3 instead the Vienna system, we are in the opposition in the position that only been reached 3 million time. Okay, instead of playing knight f3, we need to play knight c3. That makes the difference, because knight f3 is played 56 million times, but it is played only 3 million times. This shows that starting moves that aren't necessary in the main line at the grandmaster level can quickly take games into an unfamiliar territory for your opponent, and you can be better prepared to take advantage of that. Okay. In the next chapter we'll I'll give you a strong, reputable opening weapon for white and black that your opponent won't see too often. This is something we call competitive or strategic advantage. You'll help you be playing position that you know better than your opponents, at least in the opening few moves. Of course, I will be choosing select example for white and black, but the same principle applies. Choose an opening and explore how variation that are in the main lines, but which still scare lot of wins, can be played to give yourself an advantage early in game. Summary: depending on various factors, you'll need to choose and stick to a certain opening. Okay, that is the summary of chapter 9. Depending on various factors, you'll need to choose and stick to a certain opening for white and black that suits your playing style, chess strength, and overall lifestyle. Essentially, if you only have time for 30 minutes of chess on your smartphone during a work break, your opening repertoire should be different than such of the student contending for national championship. For both white and black, it's better to know a small number of opening very well than only one or two moves of many different opening. Okay, we finished the chapter 9, and this is the summary of chapter 9. You have to stick with I have to stick with an opening that I have to play hundreds of times, thousands of times. Then I know how to respond on my opponent, how to give a response to my opponent. Chapter 10. We'll read chapter 10 on 28 March or 27 March. Bye bye, see you.